Good evening, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board at 6:01 p.m. on September 21st, 2023. I am Mike Capuano. I'm the chairman of the Planning Board. With me tonight is our Vice Chair, Amelia Aboff, our Clerk, Jahan Habib, and Debbie Howard Easton. We have 4 members of the Planning Board here, which means we have a quorum. Keep skipping past my agenda. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Act of 2023, this meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation. An audio recording of these proceedings will be available by using the registration link once the meeting has concluded. This meeting is being recorded. So we have a number of items on our agenda tonight. But before we proceed, I know that Debbie has a disclosure that she needs to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to put on the record that I missed our last meeting on September 7th, but I have watched the videos of the planning board meeting in addition to the joint meeting with the land use committee and submitted the appropriate affidavit affirming same. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Debbie, very much. And Amelia as well.
Mr. Chair, I have the same disclosure that I missed the September 7th meeting, and I've watched both of the video recordings and submitted the appropriate affidavit, and I'm up to speed on those cases.
Great, thank you. Jahan, would you like to add anything? Just feel left out? Okay. We do have a number of items on the agenda tonight. The first item of general business will be the approval of minutes from September 7th, 2023. We have a number of public hearings, all of which have been opened, so nothing new needs to be read into the record, but for the purpose of the benefit of the meeting, those are 45 Mystic Avenue, 7 Washington Street, 394 McGrath Highway. We also have 3 proposed amendments to the zoning code that we heard through a joint hearing a few weeks ago, for which we have received written testimony and for which we should make a recommendation to the Land Use Committee tonight. I would like to take up the approval of the September 7th, 2023 meeting minutes first. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or suggested revisions to those draft minutes? Okay. Being none, the chair moves to adopt draft minutes of the September 7th, 2023 meeting minutes as the final meeting minutes of the planning board, seconded by Amelia. Raisa, could you please call the roll?
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
We have unanimous vote. We have meeting minutes. And following that vote, I just want to recognize the excellent work of our recording secretary, because these meeting minutes occurred just like two weeks ago. And we've already got them in draft format ready to be voted on, which is a great step forward. So I just want to thank our recording secretary for the hard work that's being done. I want to bring up the 3, so I'll take some items out of order, as is the discretion of the chairman. I want to take up the recommendations to the city council first. I don't know if yep, Dan is here. So Dan, if we have any questions, we'll be able to answer them as we move forward in potentially making recommendations to the Land Use Committee this evening. So if Dan wants to be unmuted and or unsheathed through the camera, we'll need to welcome him into the meeting.
How's that? Thanks for having me.
Revealed.
This is my kitchen, by the way.
Beautiful space. Okay, so we have a number of items that we heard through the joint hearing a few weeks ago. Just for the purpose of the record, we have Daniel C. and Liba R. Savitt requesting an amendment to the zoning ordinance map, change the zoning district of 113 Prospect Street from UR to NR. Second one is David Innes requesting the adoption of amendment to the ordinance to change 0 White Street Place from NR4 to UR and 14 White Street Place from NR to UR. We also have the amendment being proposed by councilors Ewan-Campen and Wilson requesting an amendment to the ordinance to include vegetated roofs. Dan, for the purpose of this, does it make sense to start with vegetated roofs? Just because I think that's a little bit more interesting, because we've received obviously testimony, both oral and written, and we've got some opinions from the law department that I think is beneficial for the planning board to hear before we consider how we're going to vote.
I certainly agree with you that that topic is more interesting. Although we have no objection to the other two map changes, generally speaking. So I'd happy to talk about any one of these in whatever order you would like to take them.
Let's do roofs first, because that's the one that I think has kind of the most interest.
So the place where I'd like to start is that the administration, the OSPCD and all of the divisions in it are all supportive of green roofs. We recognize the value add that they provide to buildings and the ecosystem of Somerville, the ability that they have to capture stormwater, reduce urban heat island, provide habitat for pollinators, and we support their proliferation across the city. Unfortunately, we feel that that's a hard thing to do actually through a zoning ordinance. And the story that I actually want to recall is that I previously worked with now Mayor Ballantyne when she was a city councilor, when we were working on the overhaul prior to its adoption in December of 2019. And sometime during the summer, she requested that we provide a green roof requirement in the zoning ordinance. And what we ended up adopting was a green roof or solar panel requirement in the overlay districts, the master plan development overlay district, because that is an optional zoning district and not a requirement of every building in the city, because the finding of the solicitor's office was that it's likely unenforceable because of the building code. And that was their opinion at that point in time. And unfortunately, their opinion, for the sake of requiring green roofs, their opinion hasn't wavered. The other thing that I'd like to point out is that it's hard actually for, generally speaking, attorneys don't tell you that something is or is not illegal. They identify the risk associated with any one law that you might adopt related to other laws and regulations that are out there. But there are two places where those answers are made. And the first one is obviously a court of law. And the courts of Massachusetts have ruled that the building code is a comprehensive ordinance, and that if a topic is mentioned in the building code, it is comprehensively regulated by the building code and nowhere else. And the second place is that towns, actually, when they pass a zoning ordinance through town meeting, as reviewed by the Attorney General's office. And in every circumstance where a town has attempted to do any kind of regulation, whether it be green roofs or, for example, very similarly, banning natural gas hookups, the Attorney General's office has not wavered from identifying that those topics are regulated by the building code. And it's similar in that if a building has natural gas hookups, here's how they're regulated, and here's how you put those together inside your building. And if you have a vegetated roof, here's how you have to structurally build your roof. And in both circumstances, that's the comprehensive regulation of by the building code of that topic. And in both places for towns, that's been struck down by the Attorney General's office. So if you kind of like put that all together and with the opinion of our solicitor's office, it makes it really hard to figure out a way to do this in zoning that's not an option. And so if we feel that this could be achieved better through potential incentive programs, for instance, we know that we might lose our net zero density bonus because net zero will now be regulated by the Stretch Energy Code, which is like a subchapter of the building code. So we're running into the same problem with that. But we maybe could provide other kind of incentives to get these same things. Now we'll get net zero buildings because of the specialized stretch energy code, but not necessarily green roofs. So we think that it'd be better to have through optional development or incentive programs or things that are outside of zoning. We don't know what all of those might be, and the Office of Sustainability and Environment is doing a comprehensive overview because of the adoption of our specialized stretch energy code of how it intersects with the zoning ordinance, and to figure out what in zoning needs to be removed and what areas is not regulated by the building code that we might be able to now utilize in zoning from the sustainability perspective. So I wanted to provide that like broader picture of where we're kind of in the same place that we were in 2019 when we explored doing this citywide, and we ended up having to put it in an optional overlay district because of the risk. And this proposal is to make it a requirement across the city. So for that reason, we feel the same way that we did in 2019, that this really isn't something that you can adopt it, but it's potentially preempting the building code in doing so. And we won't really know that because we're a city until somebody potentially sues us to challenge that, because our zoning ordinances are not reviewed by the Attorney General's office. So our only place of conclusion for that question is in the court of law.
Dan, thank you very much for that background and the very helpful explanation of the position of the administration of the law department. I do have some thoughts here, but I'd like to hear from my colleagues first before we move along. Does anybody have any comments or questions of Dan, or points of discussion that they'd like to raise? Yes, Amelia.
For you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the explanation from Mr. Bartman, and I support this ordinance in concept and in intention, I think, in a lot of ways. But I did have a number of concerns with sort of the applicability and the specific wording of it, as well as the exemptions. So I would just say that as we sort of move forward in discussion of this topic, I, as one member of this board, would be wildly in support of structuring incentives or restructuring the green score calculation, or anything that we could do within the bounds of the zoning ordinance, and without upsetting our city solicitors too much, that would facilitate the adoption of widespread vegetated roofs. But I did have concerns about this language, and it sounds like there are broader concerns about this language appearing in this format here.
Thank you. Jahan or Debbie, would either of you like to? Yeah, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to what Vice Chair Aboff, I in general agree with the spirit and the intentions behind the two councilors requesting this amendment to the zoning ordinance. One of the things that I would like for my colleagues to consider is how can we support the intention here without necessarily violating or potentially violating any of the regulations and concerns that Mr. Bartman has outlined in his very informative presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Debbie, you have anything?
Just a question. I don't know the answer. I assume the answer is no, but does the state AG's office ever issue opinions, kind of like the IRS sometimes does? If you can go in with sort of a proposal to get a sense on what their view would be?
I think they do issue some advisory opinions on occasion. I don't know if they do in this circumstance.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the AG's office does issue opinions about laws frequently of their own initiation. I have a funny story where a city adopted a zoning amendment, and I wanted to know whether or not it was legal, and so I wrote the Attorney General's office, and their response to me was, "That's a city, and we don't review those, so we're not giving you an opinion." So that it was an attempt, but So for instance, they have provided opinions about the specialized stretch energy code because the state went ahead and adopted that. So they provided guidance related to it, but it's not the same as getting that type of opinion for a town. They're obligated to review that in state law.
Right.
So, so my thought is this on these. I think we are all, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I certainly, and I know that some of my colleagues have spoken on it. I'm very supportive of the concept of green roofs, enhancing our green scores and sustainability efforts and all sorts of things like that. I think that's important. I think this is an amendment rooted in the right place and moving towards the right goals. I am hesitant, however, to recommend for approval an amendment where we have faced some concern from our attorneys on whether it would be a defensible use of our zoning power to be able to do this. And so while I usually listen to our attorneys, I don't always, but in this case, I think it makes sense to do so and to defer to that guidance. I also want to point out that this is merely a recommendation to the Land Use Committee, and we are not the authority actually voting on whether this is going to become an amendment such that it would potentially subject the city to any exposure. That being the case, when we have had proposed amendments where we have gotten some skepticism about the defensibility of those amendments by the city attorneys, the usual practice of the planning board is to make a general statement about how we feel about the potential amendment, then issue a no recommendation, kind of in light of the recognition of the guidance we've received from the solicitor's office. And I would recommend in this circumstance that we follow that path and make a general statement in our recommendation saying that we generally support the concept and the goals that are trying to be achieved by this proposed amendment, but in light of the guidance and advice given to us by council, that the planning board is making no recommendation on this proposed amendment. Does anybody have any suggestions or revisions to that potential recommendation? Yeah, Amelia?
I would add to that perhaps that we could encourage them or note our encouragement to city staff to continue exploring alternative means to achieve these goals.
Sure, absolutely. Anybody else? Okay. In that case, the chair moves to make the recommendation of no recommendation with the comments made by the board, inclusive of myself and Amelia, Jahan, and Debbie, including the most recent comments. Seconded by Amelia. Raisa, could you please call the roll?
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
You have a unanimous vote for a recommendation of no recommendation, which is great. Next up, let me find that agenda item. Keep losing it from my. Let's do Prospect Street, 113 Prospect Street. That's the proposal by two homeowners seeking the rezoning of 113 Prospect Street from UR to NR. Obviously, testimony was taken on this a few weeks ago. We've received some written testimony as well, broadly in support of what seems to be two folks just trying to do something small and kind of being caught in a little bit of a red tape issue that I don't think was intended for them to be placed in to do what they wanted to do. Dan, I don't know if you have any comments on this one in the position of staff or the administration.
No, we don't have any objection. It is a weird red tape issue that we're working to fix in a comprehensive way, but we just haven't had the fix to put forward yet. So this is another way of fixing it specifically for this property.
Sure. Anybody have any comments or questions on this proposed amendment? Okay, seeing none, the chair moves to make a recommendation that the land use committee adopt this proposed amendment. Seconded by Amelia. Raisa, please call the roll.
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Yeah, the planning board has a unanimous vote to recommend adoption of this proposed amendment. The last proposed amendment that we're dealing with tonight is David Innes requesting the adoption of the amendment to change 0 White Street Place from MR4 to UR and 14 White Street Place from NR to UR. Dan, I'm wondering if you, on behalf of staff and the administration, have any position or guidance on this particular amendment, proposed amendment.
We also have no objection to this one. I'll mention this will unify the zoning into one district for a number of lots that are fronting White Street Place. So it would kind of make sense to bring them all together if it's going to be redeveloped into an apartment building. The zoning for White Street itself that is perpendicular is also a 4-story mixed-use building. So this will fit in if that is ever also redeveloped. So from an urban design perspective, this would fit in with the area and with the other side of the municipal boundary. Cambridge has 4-story buildings going up. So that's, I think, the main point we have with that is it's kind of all unified down there.
Anybody have any comments or questions on this one? Yeah, Amelia?
Mr. Chair, I'm supportive of this application. I believe this applicant came to the land use committee several months ago with an application to do the same thing, but to a higher zoning district, and there was a lot of pushback from neighbors and from one of the ward councilors. And them taking that feedback and coming back with this more contextual proposed solution feels like something to be encouraged.
Okay. Anybody else? I'll just say I'm generally supportive of the proposed amendment for the reasons kind of stated by both Dan and by Amelia. I think it makes sense to move this up to a slightly more dense neighborhood to be cohesive with the parcels in the area, as well as the buildings that Cambridge permits in the area. So with that being said, I move to recommend adoption of this proposed amendment to the Land Use Committee with the comments that have been made by members of the board. Seconded by Amelia. Raisa, could you please call the roll?
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
We have a unanimous vote to recommend adoption of that particular proposed amendment. And so, Dan, I don't know if you want to hang out anymore, if you have other places or more interesting places to be, but you are otherwise free to go.
Thanks for having me. See you soon.
Thanks very much. Okay, so we've done minutes, we've done the amendments, and now I would like to, actually, we've got a request from 45 Mystic Avenue to continue the application to October 5th, 2023. Does anybody have any comments or objections to that request for a continuance? Okay, seeing none, the chair moves to continue 45 Mystic Ave to the October 5th, 2023 meeting, seconded by Amelia. Raisa, please call the roll.
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Okay, that agenda item is continued. The next item on our agenda that I'd like to take up is 7 Washington Street. I believe Andrew is the case planner, and Andrew, I think, is in the group here if he wants to be. Hey, Andrew. So it's my understanding that based on the testimony that was taken last time, and the questions and comments by the planning board, that there's been updated information provided by the applicant on some of those issues. There is a supplemental memorandum provided by the applicant, but Andrew, correct me, that it has not yet been reviewed by staff such that a supplemental staff memorandum making a recommendation on those items is not yet available. Is that right?
So staff felt in this case with the documents that were provided by the applicant did not need necessitate another staff memo, but I'm happy to provide any feedback you would like. Our stance has not changed and we have really no new information to provide other than I was able to connect with the mobility division regarding the loading and unloading activities for this project, and I can give a little bit more insight from them if that is helpful.
Okay. Yeah, to the extent that, well, actually, I don't know if a representative from the applicant is also here. Because I'd obviously like to hear from you, Andrew, and I also like to hear from them as to the information that they've provided since our last meeting. So let me do this. If there's a representative from the applicant that's available to be unmuted and make whether it's a presentation or at least just an overview of what was presented. I see Attorney Vigorito's hand raised, so she might want to be unmuted and make a brief comment or presentation.
This is Raisa speaking. Anne, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end.
Good evening, Chairman Capuano and members of the board. We actually, this evening, you know, there was a lot of discussion about the net zero passive house portion of this project. So we do have Andrew Steingeiser of RDH Building Science Incorporated here this evening. So like him to speak to that. I know the material board was, you know, there's some questions. So our, you know, architectural team can discuss that. Any questions relative to landscaping? I mean, the entire team is here this evening, and you know, obviously we have to hear from Andrew about mobility, but you know, we can go to net zero and then materials, and then you know, to mobility matters if that pleases you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please.
Great, thank you. I'll hand off to Andrew.
This is Raisa speaking. Andrew Steingeiser, you have been unmuted. You may be self-muted on your end.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Andrew Steingeiser here of RDH Building Science. I lead the Passive House consulting practice for the Boston office of RDH Building Science. RDH was engaged to assess the Passive House feasibility for 7 Washington Street by the design team. We determined based on our preliminary review of schematic documents that Passive House certification is possible for 7 Washington Street. RDH provided a matrix of basis of design components to be used to achieve a passive house and all electric design in this particular design. We also provided an initial FIAS 2021 calculation to provide the Passive House Institute US targets for the project. And I can welcome any discussion of any questions that you have about our assessment.
This is Raisa speaking. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. Andrew, are you the presenter for tonight, or is that Alberto?
That is Alberto from JTA. I am one of their consultants joining them this evening.
This is Raisa speaking again. Alberto, I have made you into a presenter, so you're able to share your screen at this time.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have all the documents that you guys want, whatever. This is the memo that Andrew is discussing. Andrew?
Yes. Well, if you'd like to walk through it, sure. You can continue down. As I mentioned, we took a preliminary assessment and determined that Paso House feasibility is possible for 7 Washington Street. We understand that through the Somerville zoning ordinance for adding density to the site, that is a requirement for this particular project. Also, we recognize that through the current stretch energy code, or the opt-in code, actually, Paso House is an option, or HERS rating is an option for this building, as it's under 12,000 square feet. But again, per the zoning, FIAS certification is required. So that's what we examined here. For those unfamiliar with Passive House, forgive me if I'm saying anything that you all know already, but this diagram illustrates elements of Passive House design where we rely on an airtight thermal enclosure with continuous insulation, minimization of thermal bridging, structural and cladding, and with the airtight enclosure, rely on an energy recovery ventilation system to provide continuous fresh air to the building and minimize heat loss through ventilation as well. So it's that combination of things all together through Passive House that achieves the design and balance of mechanical enclosure. So those are the items that we evaluated and provide basis of design recommendations for. That we discussed with the design team that will be incorporated into the design. Alberto, you can keep going, please. Thank you. This is just a preliminary FIAS calculator inputting information regarding the project and generating the FIAS targets that will end up showing up in the Passive House model that are our targets for this project. The 4 space conditioning criteria, annual and peak heating and cooling, as well as a source energy target there. So already, through all the passive design measures that Passive House requires, as you all know, it's the best first step towards net zero by minimizing the amount of renewables required to offset the carbon emissions of that building. So, and here's the summary of elements that go into the Passive House equation. So we looked at the building enclosure, slab, subgrade foundation walls, above grade walls, roof, and provided R values that would be targeted with those assemblies and achieved through those assemblies. Looking at this particular design, it has about a 20% window to wall ratio, which is right in the ballpark of being correct for a Passive House design. It's an efficient starting point. That glazing will consist of triple glazed Passive House windows, again, to ensure the performance of the thermal enclosure, as well as providing thermal comfort to the occupants. And then balancing that with mechanical systems. This particular project is looking at using a decentralized scheme for mechanical equipment. So that would be decentralized ERVs, energy recovery ventilation, 1 per unit, decentralized air source heat pumps, a mini split per unit, locating condensers on the roof of the project. Domestic hot water would be looking at a heat pump water heater, 1 per unit. And we usually target a minimum of 80% Energy Star rated all LED lighting to assist with the source energy targets. And appliances, we look for Energy Star rating. And again, when it comes to washer dryer, we look at heat pump washer dryer units to minimize the penetrations and potential for heat loss through the enclosure, as well as a recirculating range hood, those things that disrupt the balanced ventilation of the project. So we've looked at all the items that have inputs in the energy model and determined basis of design items for the project that would achieve the passive house design, and actually an all electric design as well. So our next steps include confirming quantitatively through the design process and energy modeling process that would be followed through the design process. That's what we do with Passive House Consulting, was we update the model through the design process and make sure we're on track with the design. And this was just, these last points were just highlighting some elements for the design team to keep an eye on. We might consider additional elements like heat recovery on the drain water for additional energy savings towards the source energy of the project, which again will further reduce the amount of renewable resources required to offset the carbon emissions of the project. And just a few internal notes for the team there, and also making a suggestion about we may consider in the detailing when we get to that phase, details such as this one at the bottom, where we go so far as to examine over-insulating the frame, as that's a particular area of heat loss through the thermal enclosure. So again, thinking about some of the detailing that would be involved in this building as well. So again, we determined on our preliminary review that passive house certification is possible for 7 Washington Street, and are comfortable with that, given all these bases of design items.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to continue going through the board of material. That was the other discussion that we had last 2 weeks ago. We present basically per elevation. We're just showing the materials of the project. In this case, brick in the bottom at street level. That basically is the base of the building. We have 3 colors of cementitious material to make the architectural to work. We have a light gray that makes the front volume facade. We have a HardiePlank board that runs the vertical element at the entrance of the building, just recessing that volume. And then we have on the back, the stair. We also add a mahogany wood texture close to where the doors are. So basically on the trims of the windows, that give you that a little bit more warm scale for the building that the cementitious material doesn't give all the time. And then we have a metal panel, metal just to get the flashing at the top of the project. Those are basically the 6 materials that the project goes, and then we are just showing it per elevation, just identifying those materials in each of the elevation, the base, the HardiePlank metal, the vertical cement board, and the other cement board on the back. On the rear of the building, the same materials, the stair, volume, the front volume, the wrap around to end the 3-dimensionality of the building, and the base of the building with brick. And then the party wall on the other side, that is the blank wall, brick, and the cementitious. We're using on both of the walls material because we don't know any of the development that will go on the later phases, but at least when the building is up, it looks like a finished building. And those are the 2 elements that we have, that we add to the package for the balancing board.
Thank you very much.
And
Does anybody else on the applicant team have anything else that they would like to add before I kick it back to Andrew for the opinion and thoughts of staff?
Chairman Capuano, I think we're fine. I think we probably, mobility was an issue last time, so I think we need to circle back with Andrew and, if the team needs to respond, we'll be ready.
This is Raisa speaking. I'm really sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. And if you could just state your name for the record when speaking. I don't believe you. Thank you.
So sorry, Raisa. Attorney Ann Vigorito, 424 Broadway, Somerville.
Thank you. So if there's nothing else from the applicant at this time by way of a presentation, I'd like to ask Andrew to give an overview of the staff's position on the amended information that was provided to us. And I just want to clarify for the purpose of the record, the planning board does not usually consider information that's provided by an applicant per request of the board as new information that would trigger new public testimony. Usually that's something that would change the fundamental layout or structure or something or use of the building. But a clarifying memorandum is not usually something that triggers additional public testimony. So at this point, I don't intend to open up testimony for the information that was provided to us, but I obviously will welcome discussion by and among the board. So, Andrew, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for the record, I am Andrew Grabinski, planner with Planning, Preservation and Zoning for the city. The update that I have from mobility is mainly information that was provided in the applicant's transportation access plan, and as well as just general information from the division regarding sort of how these activities happen with projects of this size. As you're aware, there isn't a dedicated loading and unloading area for this project. For tenants, they're going to need temporary parking restrictions from the parking department for moving in and moving out. For deliveries, UPS, Amazon, etc., they're most likely just going to pull over where most convenient. And unfortunately, that might be in a bike or bus lane. And then usually for projects this size, mobility doesn't require them to dedicate an area specifically for loading and unloading, specifically with a project that's only about 10 residential units. However, their TAP does mention that the activities for loading and unloading is more, and I believe the applicant means moving and moving out, is going to take place on Mount Vernon Street, which is just to the rear of the site, not necessarily touching the property, but it's very close by. However, it's not a binding document.
When you say to the rear of the property, that's not the kind of the bus stop area that we were talking about last time.
So
right?
there's, it's sort of, Mount Vernon sort of meets Washington as like a triangle, where the site is, that intersection. And then, so you have Washington Street. Maybe the applicant can pull up the site. Alberto, is that possible?
Just
Give
a second.
like one of the plans that has the site plan. So I can walk the board through it. So as he's getting that up, basically, they'll just sort of walk around the Mount Vernon over to Washington Street for those activities. There is a parking lot, as I know you're aware, next door to the left on the site plan. Yeah, so yeah, there's where Alberto's cursor is Mount Vernon Street. And then you wrap around the corner and then there's Washington Street, which the site has frontage on. And the reason I believe the applicant discussed loading and unloading happening there is because it's more of a residential street and not a main thoroughfare like Washington Street is. A lot busier, and of course there's a bus lane there as well. So in terms of that actually happening, I don't know. Again, the TAP's a non-binding document, and unfortunately it's on a different property. It's not directly adjacent. So
it's also a small building with no.
It's a smaller building, correct? Yeah. So again, mobility doesn't usually require them to have a dedicated loading and unloading area specifically for this type of apartment building. So that's really the main updates. I'm happy to do some follow-up if you would like, but so yeah, again, nothing's really changed in terms of staff's response or recommendation. It's just, you know, sort of like any other place in Somerville right now, where there isn't a dedicated area.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Andrew, does anybody have any comments or questions of the applicant or staff at this time? And I want to thank the applicant for the updated information, and I want to thank Andrew for his explanation on staff's positions. I saw Debbie's hand. Yes, please, Debbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow on just a process on the passive house process and following on my colleague Mike's comments that he made at the last meeting. He's not here today, but noting that there was solar generation and storage on the plans. But as I understand it, you know, that may be somewhat aspirational. And once you get to the stage of the, you know, working with the consultants for passive house, you determine whether on-site generation is possible. Is that the case?
Sure, Alberto, do you want to take this, or would you like me to?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, that's could be a possibility. As I said last time, it's like, you know, the project will go through passive house, and we will study all the elements to achieve passive house. And it's in that process we can add solar. But the thing is that it's a very small building, and we're trying also to get a roof activity commons roof deck for the residents, and the units for the heating system and HVAC system will be also in the roof, because there is no space at the ground level. So that will limit that options. We just put it there as a to be determined in the process. But Andrew, if you want to add something.
Sure, Alberto. Yeah, Andrew Steingeiser again here from RDH. We would strive to create as compact as possible mechanical layout on the roof, while balancing the other programmatic needs. You know, we will explore through the passive house updated modeling. Typically, we don't certify passive house buildings with the PV unless there's a real issue with the source energy being achieved. Of course, it's a good thing to add that on as well, to help offset any carbon emissions. So, I mean, we'll continue to look at maximizing the square footage for solar, and look at any design opportunities to potentially integrate that in any rooftop structures, et cetera, as the design progresses, certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah, Amelia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't have the benefit of being at the last meeting, so I didn't get to raise any comments then, and I'm sorry that means that I have a lot of comments this evening. Some of these are questions, but some of these are maybe just observations. If I may, if this is an appropriate time. I'm struggling with the level of detail and inconsistencies in this application, and I feel as though this is approaching a level of concern, and so I'd just like to make sure that there's sort of a clear understanding on some of these topics. So starting with sustainability, thank you for the passive house memo. The sustainability questionnaire that was submitted with the original package was missing a great deal of information. There were many fields just left completely blank, and thankfully those answers have been provided in the memo that was subsequently submitted on the 14th, but I just want to be clear that, like, we expect to see those materials submitted with the original application. They're part of the set of materials that we need to be able to review. So thank you for correcting that. But I still have some questions on that around resiliency and on-site generation. Debbie did a great job in raising Michael's question from last week about on-site generation. I believe you submitted materials that say that there will be on-site renewable generation as well as on-site energy storage. That is noted in one place in the documents. It's not noted elsewhere. There's clearly a great level of detail and sort of feasibility that has not yet been completed for this project. So I'm just asking you to be accurate in your representations to the board of what you are actually proposing for the sustainability measures of this project. It sounds from tonight's meeting like there is not a commitment to on-site renewables, that there is a commitment to explore them, and that is all well and good. But I would like to just share for the board's consideration, I think the likelihood of that coming to fruition is probably low. If they are planning on putting, and maybe the engineer can confirm this, 10 to 11 individual ERVs and other systems serving the individual units all on the roof of this building. I went to check whether there would be roof space for those and solar and the outdoor amenity space that I think is required, but a roof plan hasn't been provided, so there's not a way to evaluate the feasibility of that. So could you talk about sort of the feasibility of fitting the amount of equipment that you're currently discussing on the roof of this small building?
So Andrew Steingeiser again here. Yes, great questions, very relevant. In considering some of the space on the roof, the decentralized scheme offers some potential to free up roof area. The ERVs would actually reside in the units and be a through wall configuration. They would reside in a closet or a dedicated space within each unit. So those will be taken away from the rooftop. The plan is currently to locate ERV condensers, heat pump condensers on the roof again, but these will be ductless mini splits, potentially one small one per unit. Given the loads, heating and cooling loads required for passive house buildings, we can size those very small and can configure them in a way, the most compact way possible. So fortunately, out of any type of building, we can really minimize the size of the equipment, given it would be a passive house building. And again, domestic hot water that would reside in each unit as well. Let's see, any other equipment on the rooftop? We can explore schemes as well. I was considering, there are examples out there of pergola type structures where you can float panels over other obstructions that can be incorporated into the design. So there are some ways to design around other obstructions that may be on the roof, including equipment and occupied space. So I think we're at a very early stage in the design here, and I think those are elements that we would consider as we continue to explore the schematic design process.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a very reassuring answer. I'm not sure if this is in the scope of your engagement or if this is a question for other members of the applicant team, but there was also a note in the sustainability documentation and in the sustainability questionnaire about the flood risk that's present at this site, which is a concern to me, particularly because you've located the main affordable unit that you're providing in the basement. So I'd love to hear what your plans are for ensuring the resiliency in the 1 to 3 feet of water that is expected in a 10-year event.
So the units in the building is raised 2 feet above the grade. There is only one unit that is the back unit, the 3-bedroom unit that is on the back of the building that use the basement, and also there is a studio apartment on the ground level. So it's only the 3-bedroom unit that is under the water 100 years that we will provide. So basically, it's not, the glass doesn't go to the floor, so there is a lot of way to support and get constrain the water for the flood in the event of the flood of the 100 years. But that is the only unit in the project that get affected with the, also there is the electric bolt of the NSTAR that is, or Eversource, that it is at the ground level in the front of the building. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I did notice that. I was also wondering about that, just because and maybe this was a typo, but it was noted in your applications that there was expected to be 1 to 3 feet of water in a 10-year storm event, which is quite riskier than a 100-year storm event.
It is what it is. That is information that the city have given to us on the design that we need just to work for the building constraints.
Okay. Thank you. My third question is just about the exterior of the building and what is actually happening on it. There's a material shown in the elevations that doesn't appear to be included in the materials palette that was provided. It looks like it is a stripe of metal detail along the beginning of the second floor. I was just curious if that really existed or not. Also, I'd like to understand what the anticipated projection of the balconies will be. I see that the balconies are shown as protruding beyond the facade of the building in all of the elevations, but are shown as like Juliet balconies that do not really appear to be three-dimensional at all in the renderings. So I think it's important for the board to have an accurate understanding of what the appearance of the building will be.
So the materials are the horizontal banding that you call, that looks like metal, that is a cementitious material creating the pattern on the stripes on the building. So that is shown on the elevations correctly on the material board. And yes, there are Juliet balconies, not projecting balconies outside of the only balconies are in the back of the building. That is that triangular piece on the rear of the units that have a bigger balcony on those units, but in the Washington Street facade, they are just flush to the building.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then I think we addressed my questions on mobility. It sounds as though, so I think the idea that there will be loading from Mount Vernon is sort of unlikely. Not only, I think I recall that you do not control that parking lot, is that correct?
Yeah, we don't control this different neighbors.
That parking lot is padlocked on the Mount Vernon side. It's gated and padlocked. So I think the idea that that will be used for loading is probably unlikely.
No, we're not saying that we're using that parking lot for anything. We're just saying that the trucks can park on Mount Vernon because it is a residential that they can ask for permission to get a special permit to park loading and unloading. There is also street parking, few buildings down the building, not completely in front of the building. Remember, there was a bus stop at the building, so that portion of the front of the building have not get striped or anything yet for parking or no parking. There's no decision in the city on that land at the moment. It's just an empty bus stop that is left there for the moment.
Okay, thank you. And I think this came up last week, but I just want to confirm this is either for the applicant or for staff. I know at the time the staff memo was issued, there were a few concerns from PSEF on the landscape plan and on the existing street tree and a plan for protecting it. Have those all been resolved already? I think they were, but I'm, again, sorry, just cross-referencing my notes here.
I think that all the comments from the landscape have been resolved in the package submitted, but we have the landscape architect if you have any specific question that we can bring up.
My primary concern is about the protection of the street tree since you have the only tree on the block, and maintaining it during construction is something that the city flagged.
Yep, I think that all of that have been addressed of protecting that tree very well during construction.
Okay.
Andrew?
Thank you. Andrew?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, Member Aboff, Vice Chair Aboff, just to respond to that regarding the street trees. So the applicant will be required to provide a street tree protection plan, as recommended by staff. Of course, it would have to be approved by you. I just wanted to point that out, that staff did recommend that condition. So during construction, that tree is protected.
Thank you. I think that covers all my questions.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else that they would like to raise with the applicant or with staff at this time? You know, I want to thank the staff for working with the board and with the public in providing us some of the information that that we were looking for. I think you've been very amenable to working with us, and I appreciate that. I'm broadly supportive of your application, particularly in light of the discussions that we've had. And if there's no further discussion by members of the board, I'd like to move forward with taking a vote on your application this evening. Okay. Seeing none, there are actually 2 votes that will need to be taken. So following public testimony, review of the submitted materials, and deliberation of the required considerations outlined by the ordinance, I move to approve with the conditions outlined in the staff memorandum, the site plan approval to develop a 4-story net zero ready apartment building in the MR4 zoning district. Seconded by Amelia. Riza, could you please call the roll?
This is Rice speaking. Michael Capuano,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Jahan, we did not hear you.
What did Robert's rules say about a thumbs up?
I mean, it is a visual record that somebody can review. But for the purpose of being able to have an audio record, that would be ideal. Johanna, if you're trying to get into the chat, yeah, let's do this. Why don't you, we're gonna put this on pause for a second while Jahan logs out and logs in again, just to make sure that we're able to have all of our members be able to have their votes recorded. This is also one of the, as Amelia has noted, this is one of the failings that we've had on this particular platform in the past is a lot of tech issues. So I'm looking forward to moving to a different platform in the coming weeks. Oh, now everybody's gone.
This is Rice speaking. Vice Chair Aboff will also log off and log back in
Okay.
as she's also troubleshooting.
Okay. For the record, there is just now 2 members of the planning board. We are deficient of a quorum at this time, but we have 2 members who are trying to come back in.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Oh God, yes, we can. Okay, we have
My
one.
apologies.
And Amelia, can you speak?
I can hear you all. Can you hear me?
We can. Okay, the
Yes.
planning board is back in session, a full quorum that can both, hear each other and discuss things. So we had a motion on the floor, seconded by Amelia for the first vote that we need to take, which is an approval, a vote to approve with conditions, the site plan approval. We had started to call the roll, but I will ask Risa to start the vote again so that the planning board can vote cohesively.
This is Rice speaking. Michael Capuano,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Hi.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Okay, we have a unanimous vote on that vote. The next is following public testimony, review of the submitted materials, and deliberation of the required considerations outlined by the zoning ordinance. I move to approve with the conditions outlaid in the staff memorandum, the special permit to establish a household living principal use in the Mid-Rise 4 zoning district, seconded by Amelia. Risa, could you please call the roll?
This is Rice speaking. Michael Capuano,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Hi.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
We have a unanimous vote on the second vote that we need to take on that agenda item. I want to congratulate the applicant and wish them luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Capuano and members of the planning board. We appreciate all of your courtesies. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. The last item on our agenda tonight is 394 McGrath Highway, which was opened and continued at the last meeting because it was past 9 o'clock and the planning board does not take up new business after 9 o'clock. We had a joint hearing. So I would like to invite the applicant at 394 McGrath Highway to be unmuted and have whatever presentation that they would like to give on the major amendment to this application.
This is Risa speaking. Mr. Chair, I do see Will Chalfon's hand raised. I believe he is the presenter for tonight.
Okay.
Will, I've made you into a presenter. You should be able to share your screen now.
Wonderful. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Nice to see you all again. It's been quite a time. So just to quickly summarize what we're looking for here.
Just before you start, just for the record, just an introduction and address.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, I apologize. Will Chalfon from Calsa Design, 17 Ivalou Street, Somerville. We are the architects on the project. So when you last saw this and approved the project, we had 5 parking spaces at the rear of the property. As you know, this property is located in the transit zone, so we did not need to provide that, but at the time the developer wanted those 5 spaces. Subsequently, this project has been sold to another developer. That developer does not want parking. And we've had several conversations with staff and the planning department about this, and they are in support of removing the parking based on its location, as well as the additional space that we're providing to the building as a result of eliminating that parking. So just quickly as a summary, removal of that project parking, elimination of the driveway off McGrath Highway, an enlarged bike room that's been relocated towards the front of the building as opposed to the rear. There's an amenity space that has been created for the residents. As a result of the elimination of the parking, there's been an increase in the green space. And we believe we have a solution for deliveries and move-ins as well as trash pickup. And we have eliminated any traffic or drop-off in the front yard off of McGrath Highway. I just want to point out all these revisions are fully zoning compliant with the MR4 zoning. So obviously, just to reorient everyone, this is the building right on McGrath Highway, as we know. And our previous proposal had this 5 parking spaces. We were coming in here off the driveway to locate them, and we had the bike room in the rear and our transformer vault here, as well as providing an area for that van, any delivery van to park in the front. I would like to point out that we have found out on subsequent projects that driveways in the front yard are prohibited. So what we were proposing would have been rejected when we filed for permit, which we were very close to doing. So that's part of the revision here, is eliminating that. So our proposed revised plan here is to capture that space that was previously used for driveway and parking, and that will now be added green space in the rear, as well as a small, right now we're showing it as a fitness room amenity for the tenants, as well as some storage lockers, and more importantly, a large bike room that's directly accessible off of the front of the building. And we've maintained a bit of an alcove here because we're calling for some visitor bike parking racks right here, so that they're all in one nice spot, easily able to get on the sidewalk and go off to where they need to be. So just again, a side-by-side comparison, the original first floor plan, this is the proposed. I'll get to an enlarged version in a moment. The second floor remained unchanged. The only reason I'm showing this is just to show the new rear stair that we're providing off the rear, which is heading over to our access easement, which I'll get into momentarily. So again, just a little more detail on a larger scale here, showing this new fitness room, our trash room relocated here. And we've actually added an additional bike space, which is great, because what we've done is we've shown one of the, I affectionately call them the bikes with the canoe on the front, the very large bikes that you can put 7 to 8 children in and ride around town. And so we have a nice large space for that bike right here, as well as space for a fix-it station and a water fountain, as well as a common bath.
I saw one of those things zoom down my street earlier today with some kids in the front, and I was dying.
I personally think they're a little unsafe, but that's just me. But hey, to each their own.
I would have loved that. It's like a 6-year-old just stick.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. I'm just not sure I would have wanted to ride around some of the streets in Somerville. Well, anyway, so we've turned the transformer 90 degrees. It still will meet all Eversource requirements as far as clearances. We're on our site completely. Unfortunately, because of that location of the transformer, we can't make that green space, but rather it will be a paver that will go right over the top of the transformer, other than the manhole areas, which will be flush with the pavement for access by the utility company. So from an elevation standpoint and just massing standpoint, the major revision here obviously is we created this 15-foot high recess here for part of that parking. And that's now gone away, brought that bay down. As I mentioned, we kept a little bit of a recess here for weather protection for those riding their bikes in and out, discard their gear before they go into the bike room. And it just gives a little bit of a respite off the street. But overall, the changes, the building has not changed. Now, we've extensively looked into this existing easement that occurs off of Prospect Hill Avenue. The language in that easement requires that 20-foot wide easement is left clear at all times. There must, and by clear, I mean there must be access from here to the back of our building, and that's pre-existing from when this was Excel Mechanical, and they would get deliveries, of equipment for, the HVAC work they were doing, and as well, they also had their trash picked up back there. So we felt that this was an appropriate place, having some discussions in mobility. They really did not want anyone pulling on or backing out onto McGrath Highway. As we know, that's quite a busy road, can be, and it was just not safe to do that. So the proposed solution here is to have trucks park, obviously live park in that easement, so they're off the street. And then any delivery man can walk down along the front to the front door and drop that off. Obviously, it's not, the best option here, but it's, I think, the best we can do in this instance based on the location of this and the street that directly abuts it. If we were to create a live parking area in front, I think it would cause more harm than good. So we feel that this is an appropriate solution. Just from again, zoning standpoint, we still maintain all of our compliance. We haven't changed any of that. The only thing that has changed is the addition of the additional bike rack and added green space. I will tell you that one of the reasons that this decision has happened is the existing, so there's obviously quite a grade change from front to back of this building. It's actually close to 10 feet from the street to the rear. So we're doing a major cut into here. There's an existing retaining wall at the back of the property that is effectively holding up the yard of the home. There are 2 or 3 homes on, I believe it's Boston Street behind there. We would really like to avoid touching that wall. Our intention is to build our foundation and then backfill up against that wall, eliminating any potential disturbance to it. And if anything, that'll give us an opportunity to shore it up as needed. If on our previous proposal, that wall would have had to been effectively taken down and then rebuilt to sustain the new height of the cut into the ground, as it were. So we would have had to underpin a 15-foot tall retaining wall with like an 8-foot new footing. So it was going to be quite difficult. And this was all determined once we really got into the nitty-gritty of the construction documents and working with geotech engineers and such. So we feel that this makes the project much more constructible. It eliminates any traffic on the site and provides more amenities for the residents from an alternative mobility alternative transportation standpoint, rather. So, you know, we also have an updated civil plan, again, notating this new area now we can utilize for our stormwater containment. We've got Caltech chambers back here. We're also going to have a couple, we're proposing a new trench drain at the end of that easement to pick up any runoff that comes down that easement to our property. We'll handle that. We have an updated TAP that, unfortunately, due to the timing of everything, is going to be submitted to mobility tomorrow. I know that does not do us good at the moment, but that is the best we could do from a timing standpoint. But it should, I think, alleviate some of the concerns mobility had with the original proposal of people coming on and off McGrath Highway. So again, just some, you know, the updated elevations. The real difference here would be on this back elevation, where previously this was a podium with some supports here with the parking below. That is now obviously all earth, and we're providing a stairway up to the back there, which is where trash is also intended to be brought for pickup off the rear of that easement, which is how it was done before when it was Excel Mechanical. Some, you know, perspectives here outlining some of the changes, mostly to that front corner. I will note that this is a product of the program. I know we had discussed changing materials on the approved to shingles in lieu of clapboards. That is still happening. This is a unfortunate Revit screw up, which is a computer program we use here. But I want to make sure the board is aware that the materials that were discussed and approved at the original meeting have not changed. This is more of a for massing purposes to understand. So again, a rear view. Here's this new pathway we're creating with that stairwell that goes down. We did look at possibly adding new rear patios to these two units that occur in the back. But we felt that since we don't have them anywhere else, and the main outdoor space is really occurring up on that green roof, that really just planting this would be a nicer approach. And we are going to be updating that landscape plan. So, and these are just area plans, which are not germane to this conversation. So with that, I will leave it up to the board for discussion and questions. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much. I think the planner on this is Emily, is that right?
This is Raisa speaking. This is Emily's case. However, I'm here to answer any questions for Emily tonight to the best of my ability.
Sure. Then in that case, Raisa, can I ask you a question? Taking a look at so I know that there is a supplemental staff memorandum that addresses some of the mobility and loading questions that would have been raised. But I think in the original staff memorandum, it does not include, because we're taking away the parking that was originally provided, as this slide shows. There were 5 and you know, and now there are none. I did not see our standard condition or set of conditions that we incorporate when we have a building with 0 parking, where the building is not eligible for stickers, et cetera, et cetera. Was there a reason that was left out? Because I would like that standard condition included in light of the major amendments made to this project.
This is Raisa speaking. I cannot speak to why that condition wasn't added originally by Emily, but staff can definitely add that onto the decision.
Thank you. I would appreciate that in my consideration. That was very odd. It just kind of closed the screen for me. I would appreciate that, because that's a standard condition that we include in situations like this. And for the purpose of consistency, I think it makes sense to include that. It's also something that I like to see. Other than that, I think the presentation was strong, was fine. This is a major amendment which will require public testimony. So what I'm going to do, unless there are any questions or comments by staff, I see Amelia's hand. So,
Mr. Chair, I do have one question for the applicant, if I may, before we dive in.
sure.
I'm really, really excited about this new loading solution that you've identified. This easement was not discussed, I don't think, in the original version. It seems like a great solution. I'm really pleased with this direction. I'd like to ask, since there is the staircase that is proposed that would connect to that easement, and there are building amenities at the foot of that stair, if you would consider including a package room or relocating the mail room or something to that location to facilitate and encourage deliveries to happen via that way, because I think the likelihood of someone going down a staircase at the end of a parking spot is somewhat higher than walking around the edge of the building to the front. And anything we can do to facilitate people not wanting to pull over on McGrath is positive.
Sure. I think that's actually a great idea. That can very easily be achieved by effectively taking the storage locker area, flipping it over to this side, sliding the gym over, and having an accessible, a door that's, I forget what the term is, not a skeleton key, but the keys that the delivery guys have. We could have a secure place for those to be put right there. I think that's a great idea.
I'm glad that's something that would be easy to do and really excited about that solution. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions before I move along to testimony? Okay, seeing none, what I'm going to do now is open up this meeting for public testimony for anybody that wants to speak in support of the application. If you would like to speak, please exercise the raised hand button and I'll call on you in the order in which I see you. There are only 2 people in attendance right now, but I think one of the attendees may be affiliated with the applicant, I'm not sure. But at the same time, I do want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to present testimony. So anybody that wants to do it, raise your hand. Go once, go twice, seeing none. We'll close that portion of the public hearing and open it up to anybody that wants to speak in opposition to the application or otherwise express concern thereto. Please exercise your raised hand button. Going once, going twice. Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the public hearing and open it up to any further discussion by members of the planning board. This is not something that clearly has engendered a huge response from the neighborhood. I think it's a pretty good major amendment, provided that we incorporate the condition that I suggested, the standing condition that we put in on these things. I want to thank the applicant for the thoughtful design and loading plans, as Amelia has raised. Anybody have anything else they would like to add before? I think it's appropriate at this time, based on kind of the fact that there's nobody in the audience tonight, to not hold this up with any further delay. That I think we may appropriately move forward this evening, but I did see Amelia's hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just ask if the applicant would be open to that mailroom adjustment that we discussed as a condition. And then I want to just note for the board's discussion, I feel comfortable moving forward on this without the updated tab, only because it is explicit in the staff memorandum and the supplemental documents that have been provided that the applicant has been in touch with Mobility, that Mobility has identified that there are no further solutions available, and that Mobility has provided conditions that address their concerns about transportation and loading on the site, just for an abundance of clarity of why this is being handled differently, since it was a sticking point in the original application.
Amelia, I appreciate that clarification. It's something that I had wanted to raise, and I'm glad you did, because you're right. There is a whole supplemental staff memorandum that explains Mobility's position on this without a supplemental tap, and I think we are in a different position than we have been in previously, such that we can move forward this evening if the board is so inclined, because at this point, I think I am. Okay. Let me go to my favorite document, which is my little cheat sheet. The following public testimony, by the way, I don't know if we got a response to the applicant, by the applicant of Amelia's first question.
Yeah, no, I was waiting for, I have no problem putting the package room, my own, I guess my one question would be, unfortunately, we're sort of at the whim of the postal department, so they may want to do regular mail at the front door still, just because of the address, but we can certainly provide signage stating that package deliveries occur at the rear. I don't know if that, I mean, along with the package room revision that we discussed, I don't know if that would be acceptable.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, following public testimony, review of the submitted materials and deliberation of the required considerations outlined by the zoning ordinance. I move to approve with the conditions outlined in the staff memorandum and supplemented and amended tonight, the major amendment to a previously granted site plan approval, planning and zoning 21-122 for an apartment building in the MR4 zoning district. Seconded by Amelia. Can I have Raisa please call the roll?
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Apologies, I was muted. Aye.
With a unanimous vote, the planning board has so moved. So thank you and congratulations to the applicant.
Great, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Have a great evening.
With the exception of the one item that was continued, the planning board tonight has resolved all outstanding family business. So I want to thank you all for your hard work in moving these agenda items along as they are appropriately designed to get done. Does anybody have any further comments or questions or items of discussion that would like to raise? I see Amelia's hand.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Chair. I don't know when football is, and I'm sorry if I'm keeping you from it. I would just like to raise for discussion with the board and for staff very briefly. Because we've had this issue about transportation access plans and loading and unloading come up now frequently as a point of clarification that is needed on applications, I went back to our like handy dandy submittal requirements sheet and just want to reiterate that, you know, the loading and unloading, like, can we work with applicants to require them to submit loading and unloading plans, or at least a narrative describing how they anticipate these things will be handled, move-ins, moves-outs, loadings, etc. Whether the building has parking or not, because I think that a lot of applicants seem to be taking a lack of parking on their site, meaning as though we live in a world where vehicles don't exist. And that is not what is in the submittal requirements, and that is not helpful for us in evaluating projects that need site plan approval. And I see there's a section at the bottom of the submittal requirements that says the applicant may request to waive one or more sections. And I don't know if staff might be signing off on the concept of those sections being waived, but I'd like to make the request that we require those sections without waivers, either in all instances or at least in instances where there is a city mapped bike lane that is intended to be on that street, just so that we don't wind up in this dance about the timing of materials and clarification for mobility as often. And I, of course, defer to you, Mr. Chair, on that, but I was just looking at it and trying to figure out if we could solve this more systemically.
It's a good question. I don't have a, you know, a thought or a response or an answer or anything like that at this point, but I think it does merit some further discussion and maybe some weigh-in by staff as well. Maybe at the next meeting or kind of going forward, but I think it's certainly something valuable to raise for sure. I'm not prepared to discuss it tonight just because I'm not.
Nope, of course.
But I think it does appropriately put that on the radar of the board and of staff.
Thank you for letting me talk through the issue. Happy to discuss it whenever folks are ready to. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? Okay. Seeing none at 7:30 p.m., the chair moves to adjourn, seconded by Amelia. Roll call vote, please, by Risa.
This is Risa speaking. Michael Capuano,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. We are adjourned. The next meeting of the board is, remind me,
This is Risa speaking, October 5th.
October 5th. And I will warn you, it is the day before my birthday, so you better not keep me too late. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night.